Hello there everybody, good morning beautiful, how are you doing today? My name is Joesephyr and welcome to another Should You Pull video for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Now today's video we're going to be tackling the next tier of Dimensions and Transcendence whilst also taking a look at 4 characters that are getting updated this week, which are going to be Lenna, Shadow, Terra, and of course Laguna, who is getting a complete overhaul, brand new LD, brand new BT, the work. So if that's all stuff that you're interested in, then as always, stay tuned and keep on watching. Now intros are long and boring, I know, but don't forget to check out all of my social media links in the description box below, particularly over on Twitch, because we have loads coming up over the next couple of weeks. Tomorrow we have patch 6.1 for Final Fantasy 14, so I'm going to be doing a little bit of a marathon of that by streaming in the morning to do all the single player content, and then in the evening again to do some of the harder content that's coming out, hopefully some N-Singer EX if we get the time as well. And then on Thursday I have my stream anniversary stream, which is going to be a subathon, and I'm showing a bit of a different side to myself, as I've explained before, by playing some fighting games. And I've been doing bits and pieces of practice for Street Fighter V, King of Fighters, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Really encourage you guys to come along, to come and join in, as with every 10 gifted subs or 2 hours that passes in the stream, the game will change. So we'll have lots of fun with that as well. And next week, you may have seen on my social media already, on the 20th, I'm going to be joined on stream by the fabulous Susan Calloway, who is the singer for such hits within Final Fantasy XIV as Answers and Dragon Song. I'm really lucky to be able to get this opportunity to share my stream with somebody for the first time, and for it to be somebody as prolific as that. So a massive thank you goes out to Susan for reaching out and asking to do such a wonderful collaboration. Lots of stuff coming out. Definitely check out the link in the description box below for my Twitch channel if you want to see any of that stuff, as well as obviously clears for all of the Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia stuff. Though DET will be taking a day delay, as I'll be doing my stream at Subathon Anniversary on the day that Dimensions End releases, so it will be a day later than usual. And of course, over on Patreon, I do always shout out one of my patrons every time I release a video, which is my members only website, where you can get title cards made just for you for the credits of all of my videos, voice chats that we all do together, private streams we all do together, being a part of Would You Pull, all sorts of additional benefits that you can click on and find out more by clicking on the link in the description box below. And today, the patron that I'll be shouting out is going to be New Justice Team, who is brand new to my Patreon and has signed up on the Ultimate tier, so it's a hand-drawn title card for you. And you gave me the privilege of drawing Beatrix, and I was so happy about it. So a massive thank you goes out to you and to all of my patrons for keeping this channel going as much as it possibly can. And of course, don't forget to check out all of the other content creators and resources out there for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia, including Dissidia Info, Dissidia DB, DissidiaCompendium.com, the Tombury Troop for their fabulous infographics, and of course, big thanks over to Midiu and Leo Bob over on Reddit for their translations for the JP version. So let's start taking a look at some of these banners before we go into Dimensions End itself, and we're going to tackle them one banner at a time, as we always do. And the first banner we're going to be looking at is going to contain Terra and her complete kit, Shadow, his complete kit including his LD, and also Aerith EX, because somebody's got to be there for Chaos Challenges. Now largely, a lot of the stuff that you'll see from these particular awakenings are actually very simple, but they do add a lot to their kit so that they're caught up with level 90, etc. But they were quite late characters to get their LDs, so you don't find that they're going to be reinventing the wheel or anything. Shadow's C90, however, doesn't get a rework or anything, doesn't really need it. Gives him additional HP buffs on, or HP dumps on his EX attack, which is fantastic, and his EX is slightly faster as well, so that's actually very good for him. And also adds a usage of his C65. Now this is very big, as you need this in order for him to retain his 100% evasion uptime, and obviously him having Brave Caps with all of those defense ignoring hits from both himself and Interceptor is going to elevate him. Do you really need Shadow at this point in time? No, probably not, but if you like him, these little additional buffs might get you to pull him off the bench again once in a while. And then Terra gets a rework here. Now Terra, basically, like I said, it's very simple. HP dumps across the board. Both her regular skills, so Meteor and Meltdown, will deal 3 HP dumps, as well as doing those just generally more damage with Brave Potencies, etc. And then the LD attack, Chaos Wave, is going to do 4 HP dumps as well. So obviously with all those free turns that you're getting, you're going to get a larger number of HP dumps across the board. Now, the EX, so the C85 ability that you're going to get, will fill her recast gauge by 50%, so you start with it, and it also makes her Riot Blade not suck anymore, basically, because Riot Blade was a button you never really wanted to press, even though you would get the Esper Blood buff from it that gave her all of like some of her offensive buffs. You just didn't want to press it because it wasn't very good. But now you're getting 4 HP dumps off of it with 50% splash damage, so it is a button you may want to press on occasion because you get an additional HP dump to what you would have gotten from Meltdown or Meteor, even though the splash damage from Meltdown is probably actually better. C65, basically just giving her max brave damage, cap ups and all of that stuff, nothing particularly reinventing the wheel once again. And then her BT Plus, however, is going to give you a solid 30% max HP damage cap, which is exactly what she needs. Now, would I go in for Terra at this point? I think if you're a fan of Terra and you love her, then go ahead and green her. I don't think I would pull for her at this point though, certainly not for her BT. She is useful in this Dimensions and Transcendence tier, but realistically, if you have somebody like Tidus greened, you probably don't need Terra because you've got your turn hoggy character already. Yeah, she's magic and he's physical, and there's sort of elements to both of them that you might like separately from one another. But realistically, Tidus, if you've got him, you're not going to need another character like him. So if not though, like maybe you were saving for Terra so that you weren't going for Tidus, so you'd have somebody that just dealt raw damage and you're just a really big fan of Terra. She's certainly applicable, but the difference is Tidus is going to get his FR weapon much earlier than Terra is, and it's probably better too. So making choices here, I'd personally pick Tidus, but if you really love Terra, she's still good. And then, of course, the other banner that we're going to be looking at is going to contain Lenna, her returning kit with her LD, Palom with his EX, which, let's face it, no one cares, and then Laguna with his brand new LD and BT and the rework that comes along with it. Now, Lenna, much like the other two we've talked about already, is a very simple buff. Like, there's no rework here to speak of, but realistically she didn't need one because her LD is already very good. But her EX now does 4 HP dumps in it, and it also gives her a 30% HP damage dealt up buff while you have no active debuffs on her. So, really useful actually when you consider the fact that her LD attack is based on HP damage, so HP stock as opposed to bravery damage, so it might actually add up quite nicely for her. And her C65 has its duration extended and also gives you brave gains for the party, which may well be very useful. But Lenna, realistically, you're using as a character who wards off debuffs and deals damage without having to worry about the mechanics of the game, namely bravery damage equaling HP damage, because she just churns out HP damage with her LD, and it's still very good to this day. Now, Laguna's rework, Laguna's going to get an entire load here, but Laguna's rework, again, it's actually really quite simple, because Grenade and Shotgun both just get additional HP dumps added to them and splash damage in the case of Shotgun, and then the EX with the C90 is going to be getting quadruple HP dumps on it, and that's pretty much it. Now, this doesn't sound like much, but when you start factoring in the new equipment that he's got, it does add up very quickly. So what Laguna becomes with his LD, and especially with his BT, because if you're going to go for Laguna, you're going for the BT, it turns him into like a hybrid between Yuffie and Squall. So Laguna's LD weapon gives him access to Ragnarok Blade, which is a quadruple HP dumping attack, which gives you a free ability use on the next turn, and it also gives him a buff and a debuff to all enemies. So the buff, look, the fairies are here. If you've played FF8, you'll know how good these are. Gives him HP up, attack up, all that good stuff, but also gives him a double HP dumping, split HP damage follow-up attack after any time an ability is used by Laguna. So you get a double HP dump in addition to anything he's already doing, similar to Squall's Roaring Hammer. And then the debuff, the Coochie Coochie treatment, is very similar to Yuffie's Doom of the Living debuff, but instead of it being speed, you get attack, defense, and HP damage resistance down per debuff. So bear in mind that you get 3 debuffs off of Laguna from his skills and his EX, which are going to be attack, defense, and speed, and you've now got this freeing debuff as well, and you get another one off of his BT. That's 5 just from Laguna. As a matter of fact, if you're using a friend unit Laguna or a cool abilitied one, you may want to even consider taking off the EX plus passive. Obviously you don't have to do this, to get rid of the fact that on entry, Ragnarok Buster will inflict those 3 frames debuffs. So if you're wanting to make room for other debuffs with certain characters, but you still want access to Coochie treatment and Desperado, his BT debuff, it's something to consider. I probably won't, because I quite like the fact that he does so much self-contained, but it's something people might want to look at. And as I said, in addition to everything that he's getting, you get 2 HP dumps on top of everything that he does. But Desperado is where it's at when it comes to Laguna that really separates him from the pack. So you get the Desperado buff, which is Party Brave damage kappa, Party Max Brave kappa by 2% per debuff on the target. So you get up to 32% once you've greened it, etc. It's good. Like, you want Party Brave damage kappa. But in terms of stat buffs, it doesn't actually give you an awful lot. What it does give you is a golden framed debuff called Desperado, which is defense down 50%, HP resist down 20%, which obviously stacks with his Coochie treatment debuff, and whenever the afflicted target receives an HP attack from anybody, it triggers a trap attack, and this trap attack is stacked based on 500% of Laguna's attack when it's greened. Again, if you're going to be using Laguna, you're going to green him. And this is as good as it is because while it is a trap follow-up attack, it will scale in FR era with the percentage of HP damage increase you get with FRs. So it turns out you can generally expect about, in this point in time, about 200,000 damage per tick of the BT. And because it's a regular debuff and not a buff, it's going to rely on enemies taking turns to get rid of it rather than turns you're taking. And there's little kind of nuances that you can do with Laguna, like combining them with Beatrix to kind of double up on attacks you get from Rose Petals, etc. So you get Desperado trigger on top of it. And it's just a really fun combo piece that you can use in your various different compositions. Now, the thing that I will say when it comes to Laguna is that he is one of those characters. This will also be applicable to Kane, who is the first FR character, because of the way he works. You don't have to pull for Laguna because a friend unit Laguna will do pretty much everything you need him to do. He comes in, he uses his BT, you've got the Desperado debuff. You then just LD for the next X turns until Laguna leaves, and then you replace him with somebody that can do a BT attack differently. Similarly, if you've got your own Laguna BT, you can switch your Laguna out for a friend unit. And I would like to have Laguna, A, so that I can put him up as a friend unit, and B, so that I can switch him out with any friend units I happen to see that I would like to use. You don't have to pull for him though, because like I said, everything kind of works even with just 5 turns on him. His call ability is actually really good though. Ragnarok Blade as a call ability inflicts Coochie treatment as a debuff, so that's up to 24% additional max bravery HP damage down, and well as attack and defense down, all on top of everything else that he does. If you wanted to have the EX buffs on there so you get attack, defense and speed down as well, because they're not small debuffs, so 60%, 50%, 50%, they're not small, but they are very cloggy and they're all framed, so that's something you might want to choose for yourself. Laguna is just a character that is considered a very strong combo piece for a lot of strategies, but whether you choose to pull for him or not depends on whether you care about just having him or if you just want to use a friend unit version of him. Alright then, so now let's take a look at Dimensions End Transcendence Tier 8. I've said 9 a couple of times in previous videos because I forget which one we're on, but it's actually Tier 8. And this one is largely quite simple if you know what you're doing with the center gate. As a matter of fact, when it comes to DE Transcendence now, the center gate is realistically the only one you actually need to be focusing on, and then the left and the right tiers you should only really need to be taking characters that you plan on using in the center gate, and then some extras depending on what's required of you, depending on crystals or the Lufenia orb, anything like that, to just clear through it. And luckily with this one, they're pretty much very just simple to clear so you can get to the center gate. So the left gate in particular asks for a blue crystal and asks you to tackle the lunatic Mariliths, and the Lufenia orb, the left and right gates are just plain Lufenia missions as opposed to Lufenia pluses, so you'll find that they die very quickly. But basically, as long as you're taking turns that inflict debuffs every turn, and there are a lot of characters that can do this, you don't really have to worry about anything, because while it looks scary that the tick down by 2 every player turn. As long as you're dealing a debuff with an attack, so Terra, for example, does actually do debuffs with Meteor and Meltdown with all of her moves, you're still ticking up by 1 every time. But if you wanted to, you could take the off damage route and make it so that you could bring like Kadaj, or of course if you have Laguna BT, you can take that. And if they take a turn and they are inflicted with a gold frame debuff, Sephiroth Call will also work very well here, then it increases it by 4. But realistically, the amount of times I've seen like Laguna solo this event just because his BT is strong enough to do so, you could take whoever you want realistically. If you've got Laguna, obviously take him. If you don't, Terra is really fierce for it as well. Beatrix can be really good for this if you take a Sephiroth Call because of the Imperil that Beatrix inflicts most of the time, and Rose Petals. There's a lot of different things that you can do here just to get through it quickly. If you thought that one was abusable, you should take a look at the right gate. So the Ram Requins, which are the land sharks, they ask you to use the same character to deal damage to them consecutively. There's a lot of characters you can use for this. Like I said, if you've got Tidus or Terra or Lightning even, or anyone that takes a lot of turns in a row, you're gonna destroy this event. It's not difficult. The only thing I will say is if you are taking characters that deal off-turn damage, characters like Core or Yang, anything, Noctis, anything like that, that is going to break the turns in which you're attacking something consecutively, so you are going to want to be careful with that. Past that, they're really not very challenging for the left and right gates. The center gate, however, is a little bit spicier than you might think. It's different, certainly, and I actually really appreciate events like this that take a really different approach. So the Quartz Disaster actually has 3 HP bars as opposed to 1. And after you've tackled it the first time, it's actually a very generic Drake enemy that has some various different buffs it applies to itself. It has speed down and it just does brave HP attacks. It does, however, have a recast ability that is a AoE brave HP attack that then applies a blue aura to itself that makes it so that any healing or bravery gains you do don't go to you, they go to the Lunatic Quartz, which is like not ideal. And then after 5 turns, it will then dissipate. So realistically, you don't want him to do his recast attack if you can at all help it. However, there's a mechanic in this fight that means you're going to have to let him do it at some point in the fight. So once you take him down to under 10% HP, the first bar he doesn't have a Lufenia Orb. So go nuts on him at the beginning. Once he hits that point, he's then going to fully heal himself and then put a Lufenia Orb for 5 turns, which only ticks down in his turns, not yours. But if he takes 5 turns during this second HP bar, you lose instantly. So the Lufenia Orb becomes lethal and you can't do anything. This is the time where you're going to be using your BT phases, your summons, all of that stuff to take down this second HP bar as quickly as you can. Then he heals himself again, and then at that point, you then have to allow the Lufenia Orb to tick down from 10 because you can't kill him until after he's taken the 10 turns for the orb to disappear. So, second wave, you have to not let him take a turn. Third wave, you have to let him take 10 turns, otherwise you can't kill him. Now this of course means that there is going to be times where he uses his recast attack, he has an attack that comes off of the Lufenia attack, which is the same thing again, and then at that point, you can kill him. So just make sure you bring survivability. Characters like Rydia are going to be fantastic for this. Kimari is actually very good here if you wanted to use Kimari. Beatrix, Kater, any LD call abilities that you have that will stop you from taking damage is what you're going to want for this third wave. Once you get the gimmick of this fight and the fact that he has a very large amount of HP, he's actually not as difficult as it sounds because you just have to hit him really hard. The first 2 waves of this fight, you can just blitz him with as much damage as you want. Tidus, Terra, Noctis, Papalimo, Alize, Rem, all of them are fantastic for this fight because he has to get a recast attack off for him to be able to get the aura up. It's only in the third wave where you have to start being careful and make sure you're prioritizing survivability over damage while still dealing enough damage to be able to kill him once his 10 turns are up. So now it's time for Would You Pull, the section of the video where you, the viewer, get your chance to let your voice be heard and let everyone know whether you would or wouldn't pull on any given banner and why that might be the case. So a big thank you to all of my patrons once again for casting their votes and their comments on the banners that are present here. And let's talk about Terra first, because honestly, this one's not really surprising. Nobody is planning on pulling on gems here, but that is largely because 57% of people have said that they already got everything here, 9% of people said they're using 100 more tickets, 9% of people said less than 100 tickets, and 26% of people said no because they didn't want it. And I kind of understand it. I imagine that a large portion of those people are people who are using Tidus or don't like turn-hogging characters, because there's a lot of people that don't really like that kind of playstyle. And then moving on to Laguna, this one's a little bit different and a little bit more hopeful for Laguna. 19% of people said they're using gems here, 54% of people said they were using more than 100 tickets, 8% said less than 100 tickets, and 19% said no thank you. I am very much in the 100 or more tickets portion here, because I just don't feel the need to pull anything with gems at this point until FR era, if I'm honest. I'm going to be saving as much as I physically can, and I'm going to let tickets carry me as much as I can up until that point. Because I'm on a pretty good streak here at the moment, and I'd like to try and keep that up while I've got a big stash of tickets so that I can keep as many gems as I want, because pities down that road are going to be more expensive, and we all know what happens when I tend to use gems. But let's go into some comments. Maxim says, I'm going for Terra. While I know Cloud of Darkness doesn't quite pack the full punch that Laguna does, I've got her BT and therefore I have that in the arsenal. If it weren't competing for my resources as my FF6 family, I'd likely still throw tickets at it. However, I'm missing a lot of Terra's kit from when it first came out, so I'm happy to see it come around again with tweaks. I'd really like to have more of her in my arsenal, and I don't have Shadow's LD yet either. I'm willing to take the risk of more Aerith EXs here that will just become fodder, but for me, Terra is the star I'm looking for in these banners. If you like Terra, she is going to do you very well. Shadow is one of those characters that I think people kind of play around with, but don't use very often unless they're trying to kind of prove a point that they're using Shadow. There aren't many applications for Shadow that another character couldn't take, if you ask me. Neku says, gems for Laguna here. I have some of the usual reasons for this, HP cap up, follow-ups, golden debuff. That I would add favoritism as well, but I'm also using gems because of planning his debut banner being the only one from his cycle that interests me. I have no plans of pulling on Kieran's cycle. I want a gem Snow BT, but only on Cisne's banner. So I think I have a pretty decent leeway to use gems and recover them unless we get any kind of surprise banners in the middle of this period. A lot of people probably will skip most of Laguna's batch, so if you do want Laguna's BT, this is the best place for you to get it unless you plan on tokening it. But we do have free pulls across these ones as well, as far as I'm aware. If you're not pulling on Kieran's cycle though, if there's a reason to reconsider that, possibly, it's that there are some very powerful call abilities alongside Kieran BT, namely Leo and Seymour. So that's something that may be worth looking at in the future. And then gemming Snow BT, I'm probably going to go for Snow BT, which is why I've ultimately decided against tokening Zac, because I like him and the way that he plays, because it's more breakable and more offensively pleasing. But other than that, I do agree with what you're saying here about the debut banner being the most appealing one. Irvin and Thancred are very, but maybe they'll come up with something to replace the Alize banner that we got way earlier with something exciting and fresh and new that we don't know about yet. Lava says definitely going to try and pull on Laguna with what resources I have, as he's a strong character and generally has really strong utility, especially as a friend unit, and I want to be that friend unit. As for Terra, I already have her kit, so I won't necessarily be pulling for her, but her banner mate Shadow, I'll try and get his LD, as I missed it the last time, and he seems like a generally fun character to play. The same goes for Lenna, as I was on hiatus when she first dropped. Laguna as a friend unit, anyone who is putting Laguna up as a friend unit, very, very few people, I imagine, are investing in Ultima weapons for guns that will work with Laguna. But if you're wanting to focus primarily on having a fantastic friend unit, maybe think about getting a gun Ultima weapon, because it's going to be the thing that edges your friend unit Laguna out from everybody else's. Blue armor's all well and good, but having that extra HP damage cap up and HP damage dealt up is going to make that Desperado deal extra damage. So definitely think about that. And then with Lenna, I honestly think that Lenna is one of the characters that just works. Like, she's just been consistently brilliant for a long, long period of time. Let me know in the comments below, actually, if you want me to make videos based on like characters that have never seen the light of day, like Thancred, etc., really, and characters that have just been consistently good since the beginning of the game. Just let me know if there's something you'd like to see. And then finally, Sergeant Tuffy says Laguna is a BT I must have one way or another. He has bar none the most powerful effect in the game. Are you ready for this? Its BT effect includes the usual auras, some inconsequential debuff thing, and changing the fight theme to man with a machine gun. How could anyone avoid such a truly meta-defining weapon? But legitimately, Laguna is one of those units that's a superstar friend unit, especially seeing as not many people are maxing gun ultimate weapon, nor should they be, but I'll still get it before FF8 is near to my heart. But Zack and Rums are a better general use BTs, and Snow is drawing near. When I say that you might want to invest in gun ultimate weapons, you have to be aware that Laguna's probably the only place you're realistically going to use it. Because where else are you using guns at this point? Saz, I guess? Irvin? If you like that kind of thing, sure. But if you are wanting to put the best friend unit possible up, he is going to want an ultimate weapon. I'm probably just going to pick up a cheapy ultimate weapon and then not invest any further in it. But I am still building up a sword as well for Tidus, etc. So choices are going to have to be made. I can't comment on Man with a Machine Gun being the battle theme because I don't put the music on when I play the game. Because if I put the music on when I play the game, I get hit by naughty things like copyright, so I'm not allowed to. But Man with a Machine Gun is amazing, which is why I always find remixes of it, and I've put one in my channel today. So now for the big question, of course. Should you be pulling for Laguna, or Terra, Shadow, or even Lenna? Now, Laguna, I think, is a solid investment for players, particularly those that want to have a strong friend unit available to them. So, he churns out a lot of damage thanks to his LD dumps. Like, that makes a big difference to his kit. His debuffs are actually very good, both as core abilities and in your main party, because they have stacking HP damages, they have stacking defense downs, the speed down is actually quite strong, and then his not Doom of the Living debuff is both defense and attack, as well as HP damage resist down. So it all adds up to a really neat and tidy kit that just works well. But the star of the show is his BT. Desperado is a very powerful debuff. It can't be removed by enemies. It works really well in early FR era because it scales with the FR gauge going up. So you're going to deal extra damage in between turns. If you like off damage, you're going to do well with Laguna, and he's not going to cramp your style, certainly not with his legs. However, it doesn't have to be your Laguna that does those things. A friend unit Laguna will also do very well because he comes in, he inflicts all of his debuffs, all of them if you don't take his EX passive off, only the couple of them that you really want if you take it away. And then you just go BT, Desperado's up, you get your damage out of it, and then you LD for the next 4 turns so that you're getting all of that on top of it as well. It doesn't have to be your Laguna. But if no one pulls for Laguna, then there aren't going to be any friend units to take. When it comes to Terra, I think Terra is great if you already have her, or if you really love Terra and don't already have her, because she is good. She does one thing, and she does it very well. She just goes over and over and over again, throwing balls of fire all over the place and just dealing a lot of damage and stealing turns left, right, and centre. Some people may find that really boring, and those that don't probably already have Tidus. And Tidus has an FR that's coming out sooner that's very powerful. Terra does also get an FR, but it's not quite as game-breaking as Tidus is alongside Camlanor is. But if you love Terra, she's not going to do you wrong. Let's put it that way. And then Lenna and Shadow. Lenna, I think, is a fantastic consolation prize for anyone who doesn't have her. New players adore Lenna because she just does so much all in one go. Debuff immunity or ribbon is very powerful. Her HP damage attack that comes off of her Dragon's Breath LD weapon, also very powerful because it doesn't rely on dealing damage that can be mitigated by anything because it's scaling to your HP, not your bravery damage. There's a lot to like about Lenna. Shadow, I think, is largely very uninteresting though. Yeah, he's a character that people love to experiment with. He's got a lot of HP dumps and he's got a lot of defense ignoring in his kit, but realistically at this point in the game, who needs it at this point? There are much bigger damage dealers, mostly BT characters, that can do a lot more, and if you need defenses, it's not Shadow that I'm turning to. I'll say the same thing about him now as I said before. He's kind of trying to do too many things at once and doesn't really excel at any of them. If you like him, sure. If you're not fussed about him, I wouldn't bother. So that's going to be all for today's video. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. Let me know in the comments below, are you pulling for Laguna? Are you going to get a gun ultima weapon to really make your friend unit stand out? Or do you think that getting a gun ultima weapon is a waste of time because realistically Laguna's the only person you're going to put it on? Or are you going to go for Terra? Maybe you think that I'm wrong and you think that she's better than Tidus in a lot of ways, because those two do have a lot of similarities in their turn hogging capabilities. Maybe you like Shadow. Who are you using Shadow with? Let me know down below. And of course, don't forget to check out all that stuff that I talked about earlier in the video. There's lots of exciting stuff coming up on this channel. Some of it Dissidia, some of it not. And I would love for you guys to take that journey with me as well, because I am battling the YouTube algorithm at the moment to try and get some of my other stuff seen. So it would be massively appreciated for you to like this video and any videos that I make, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on any and all videos that I might be making in the future. Thank you ever so much once again, and I will see you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye now.